And welcome. Tonight is Monday, February 11th, 2019. This is the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Peter. It is 7 o'clock p.m. We will call the meeting to order. Would all please join in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone should have a copy of the agenda. If there are any changes or corrections to the agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second it.
All in favor of the agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Next, we have the minutes from our January 28th, 2019 meeting. Those minutes appear on pages 4 through 6. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of the minutes as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Next, we'll address visitors. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any agenda item? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any matter whatsoever? Seeing no one, we will move to the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins in detail on page 7 and concludes on page 21 and includes the following: the budgeted purchases in excess of $10,000 to Snell Power Sports for a Ranger electric vehicle for $11,509.08. Following licenses: a temporary on-sale liquor license to the St. Peter Booster Club for 400 West Union for April 6, 2019. Temporary on-sale beer license to the Knights of Columbus for 1801 Broadway Avenue for April 5th, 2019. This next one should read: a soft drink license to the St. Peter Farmers Market for 228 West Mulberry from June of 2019 to October of 2019. A temporary gambling license to the Gustavus Adolphus Ducks Unlimited for 800 West College for March 8th, 2019. Plus the schedule of disbursements for January 24th, 2019 through February 6th, 2019. Except for that one change on the farmers markets license, are there any comments or questions on the consent agenda? Ed?
Page 16, Todd.
Okay.
A new bus, 79,000. Is that a new bus for here in town, or?
Yeah, for Minnesota River Valley Transit, since we are now the fiscal agent for that.
So we will
Take a
see
look.
all this stuff from
Yeah,
anytime they buy a bus or anything.
yep,
Goes through our books, basically.
yep,
We'll get reimbursed for 80% of that.
Okay.
yeah. And so the transit provides for the rest. So 80-20 split, MRVT pays for 20% of it, state of Minnesota pays for 80% of it.
Roger?
You know, since the transit is a separate entity, right, separate governing board, would it make sense that we call those expenses out in a different way, other than just putting them in the consent agenda?
Let's see what we can do to make that happen. I mean, it does say in here it's Minnesota River Valley Transit intergovernmental, but we can see what we can do. Maybe there's a way for us to exclude those from this list. Ultimately, that's a bill list that would be approved by MRVT, so maybe there's a different way that we can arrange that.
Just since it's a different
Yeah.
entity.
It's very fair.
Anybody else? If not, the consent agenda resolution appears on page 21, and with that one change, as I mentioned before. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments, questions? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Curlin.
Aye.
Mayor Zimmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Quimby.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Paris.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Next, we have unfinished business, which we have none, so we will move to new business. And the first up is the Public Access Production Services Contract. Todd?
Mayor, members, that contract has concluded, and so currently we have a agreement with Tony Peregrine to provide public access production services for the city. You've seen Tony here for quite a while here. This is proposed to be a 2-year contract, or essentially 2 years, just a little bit shy of 2 years, really for now going forward in the 2019 year and for the 2020 year. There aren't any substantial modifications to the body of the contract. This was really primarily a discussion about money. The money that you see included in here is based on some of the survey data that I accumulated. It's important to remember that this is not salary or wage for Tony. He operates as an independent contractor, and so he gets a 1099, is responsible for all his own benefits and all of those kind of things, and that's part of the basis. Some of the comparables that I used include those folks that are getting this as a wage, where there would be benefits and other things on top of it. So I think it's important for you to remember that. One other item that I'd mention is that, as you know, this is a 3 or 4 time a month gig for a couple of hours in the evening, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes 4 or 5 hours. And so it isn't what one would consider extended regular work that makes you unavailable for other types of work. So anyway, that's the basis for what's going on. As you may see in here, and as I may have mentioned within the memo, Mr. Peregrine has already signed and so has agreed to this over the 2 years, or again, the almost 2 years of the agreement. The resolution's on page 27.
Questions? Steve?
Todd, does the school district reimburse the city for their use?
They
of-
do pay us, I can't remember the exact amount, but it's a little over a couple $1,000s.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
On that same line, I know Tony did the filming for the
Kennedy's-
League of Women Voters. How does he get paid? Do they contract with him separately?
No, they do not. That is a part of the policy that the council approved to provide, that the city provides that out of its SPPA funding
Okay.
to provide for those type of activities.
All right.
Another example that would fall into where we are additionally compensated, which didn't happen this year but has happened in previous years, when the chamber asks us to film or tape, that shows you how old I am, record the 4th of July parade. And so the chamber is paid for that in the past, or compensated SPPA for that in the past.
Okay. Anyone else? The resolution authorizing execution of production services contract between the city and Tony Peregrine appears on page 27. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mayor Zimmerman?
Aye.
Councilmember Hooker?
Aye.
Councilmember Blakely?
Aye.
Councilmember Graham?
Aye.
Councilmember Barrett?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Carter?
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Thank you, Tony. Next up, we have a 2019 library services contract. Todd.
Mayor, members, the information starts on page 28, and on the bottom of page 28, it lists us a few examples of years. Onto the top of page 29 that the county has provided funding for you through the library services contract. God, we could talk about this ad infinitum if you'd like, but really this is the mechanism by which dollars come to the city from the county. The county is required to meet a minimum maintenance of effort. And as some of you may recall, in the distant past, you actually brokered services between the county and North Mankato. That is no longer the case and hasn't been for probably more than a half a dozen or so years here. The contract provides a little bit over $50,000 in revenues to your library fund. If you choose not to enter into the agreement to provide services, which frankly you're obligated to provide anyway to citizens, boy, I'm not sure what the county would do, whether they'd cut you a check or wouldn't cut you a check, but this really has worked for you in the past and provides the resources. I think it's important to also mention that they have provided for the 2019 year an additional $5,000. As you may recall, we requested, both North Mankato and the city of St. Peter together requested 20. The county provided 10, 5 apiece, 5 for North Mankato and 5 for St. Peter, of their minimum maintenance of effort. There are not substantial changes to the body of the contract. I think I write in the memo on page 29 that my discussions with North Mankato so far has been we plan to request additional funding again for the 2020 year and plan to do that in the summer of 2019 year again. Boy, I'm happy to try and answer any questions that you might have, Mayor, members.
Questions? Roger.
Obviously, we appreciate the increase.
Yep.
Do you happen to know off the top of your head what our library budget is itself?
Yeah, our library budget is just a little over $453,000 for the 2019 year. And so they provide about $50,000 towards that in the 2019 year. One of the issues that we've faced, and maybe I should be quiet and let you ask more questions, Roger, if you have more questions.
You perked my interest now on what
Well,
you were going to say.
So one of the issues, of course, that we've had is that your costs have continued to grow while the contribution that they make has continued to be static.
Right.
There are a number of ways to measure this and provide comparables, maybe based on the number of materials that are checked out. Maybe it's the use of Hoopla, if people are familiar with Hoopla. Maybe it's people through the door. A lot of different ways you could calculate that. But from my perspective, you have continued to levy. Your cost of providing services has continued to go up, and your reserve numbers have gone down. In fact, you know, your reserve numbers as recently as 2016 was of over $250,000, and now starting the 2019 year, it's around $39,000. And so it's really
into it
clear.
every-
And you increased your levy, of course, this year as well. So certainly the county aren't the only taxpayers that are providing additional revenue for the library system, but it really is a matter of trying to keep pace with wants, needs, and cost increases that we see, whether it's personnel or materials.
Well, and as a St. Peter resident, many of us here, you know, we pay county taxes and city taxes. So we're actually paying into the library two ways as St. Peter residents.
So when the county levies, they are segregating that levy geographically to exclude the city of North Mankato and the city of St. Peter. So it's what might be called the more rural areas, but we continue to see strong usage from those areas, especially if you're counting that based on number of materials checked out. And of course, some of you are aware we have expanded services, so there are more and more services that are provided for people that have a library card in St. Peter just by utilization of their library card online. Hoopla is one of those examples. Well, there are a number of different examples that are out there.
Digital.
So the accessibility to rural residents has grown exponentially, at least relative to the amount of funding that the county is providing.
Right. They no longer have to physically come in.
They don't.
Right.
Yeah.
And just to emphasize again, for anyone who might be following along, back in 2011, the county was providing $49,000. That dropped to $44,500 during the economic hardship starting in 2012. That number has stayed stagnant ever since. And so that 50,000 number represents about the same level that the county was supporting the library back in 2011. So that isn't really yet even a dramatic increase. It's almost just bouncing back to the level of support they were providing about a decade ago.
Over 8 years, it is a 1.9% increase, which equates to 0.2% increase per year
year.
since 2011.
Thank you for that
The
math.
question that I have, Todd, is how does the state and the county equate minimum maintenance of effort to dollars?
Well, there's a formula that's applied to that based on your previous year's expenditures. The state rule, forgive me, I don't remember if it was a rule or a statute related to that, was modified in 2009 or 2010, so it effectively allowed the county to provide fewer dollars at that point. But generally, there's a threshold that is based on your previous year's expenditures. Now that threshold provision has been eliminated. So as an example, if the county wanted to go back next year for the 2020 year to $49,000, they could do that. They're not obligated by going up $5,000 to maintain
Right.
that going in the future.
Right. Well, I guess, does anybody else have any questions or comments? I wish, to me, either, Susie, you're on the library board, either through the library board, Friends of the Library, I think we need to advocate and lobby our commissioners, one new one, Mr. Morrow and Mr. Rennell, that at least represent St. Peter, and have these people advocate for pulling their weight on this deal. This is, thank you, but it
We
could be
could
better.
still use
Could be a
more.
lot better.
Yeah.
especially the way the city has contributed to the coffers of the county over time and since 2011. So that's just, so if you can maybe kind of carry that forward if you would, and if you'd like me to come and talk to them, I'd like to, at least try to get some, because that's the only way they're going to make a change is if they hear it from the users.
I will bring that up at our next library board meeting, and we'll look into maybe having a discussion with some commissioners.
If I could add to that, I know the library board chair has written a number of emails to the board chair, the county board chair, and the county administrator, so we appreciate that. I would expect that the process that they'd like us to follow for an additional request would be similar to what we saw in the summer of 2018 for the 29 expenditure year. And so they asked us to come and talk at a workshop, and we did that jointly with North Mankato, which seems to be a very reasonable approach.
It's a reasonable approach, and I agree we need to do that, but I do think that letting these commissioners know, and North Mankato's in the same situation, letting them know by individuals is something also that should be done. Any other questions or comments? If not, the resolution authorizing execution of library services contract appears on page 33. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Long.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Paris.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Mayor Zimmerman.
Aye. Resolution is approved. That concludes our new business. Next up, we have reports, and the only thing I really have to add from the last couple of weeks, I guess, is on Saturday, Senator Smith was here and toured the Solace project, Solace Apartments. She hadn't been there since they were completed. She had been there before the completion, for the thing, and she seemed quite, by her remarks that I heard on KUIC anyway, sorry Nancy, she seemed to be very pleased with what she saw and liked what the results so far. They've only been open since November 1st, but the results evidently are pretty good. Other than that, I have nothing else to add. Todd?
Mayor, members, just a few quick things. First of all, we do have a joint city council school board committee of the whole meeting on Thursday, February 25th at 6 o'clock here in the governor's room. Pardon me? Yeah, 21st. I hope I said 21st. Sorry. 21st at 6 p.m. in the governor's room. That is something that we plan, I hope it's on Tony's calendar to record for us.
It can't be the 21st, isn't it?
Thursday is
Thursday.
the 21st.
Okay, sorry.
Yep, and Tony has it on his list. He's
Thank
given
you.
me the thumbs up for that, so that is something that we plan to record. I do have some preliminary agendas for you. If you'd like to see the agenda, if you want to pass those around, that would be great. Again, in the governor's room. The next item that I have is President's Day closure. Here is next Monday, so all non-emergency city offices, including the library, will be closed. Community center will be open, emergency office will be open, and MRVT transit will be running that day. I also want to mention business after hours on the 19th of February here. So that's going to be held at River's Edge. So business after hours, it's not one that I normally mention, but the reason that I want to mention it is because, of course, the city owns River's Edge, and so there's a lot of things to see up there. And so if you haven't been up there recently, there'll be some tours of some of the newer areas, and I'm not sure how much construction you'll be able to see going on, but it might be worth your time and effort as a member of the chamber and the effort to go see that. I also want to mention Hallett's Pond Shoreline Planting Event, I believe is scheduled for May 18th. There's a lot of details still to be worked out, but we wanted to get that on the calendar early because that has a lot to do with some of the work that we're doing down there in relation to the pier and trail and conservation and preservation activities that are going on there. We have a lot of partners that are working on that, and one of our local entities had applied for some grant funds and is really helping chaperone a lot of that. So there'll be some more information coming out on it, but wanted to make sure that that was mentioned for you. Mayor members, the last thing that I have for you is in the back page of your packet on page 34. and I'm requesting that you take action to go into a closed session or executive session under Minnesota statutes. This is to discuss the purchase of real estate. As you know, the council had a study done related to the fire hall and potential locations, and you provided me direction, and it's my objective to report back to you on negotiations on potential sale of land, purchase of land. And so that's what I'm hoping for. I do not anticipate that we'll come back in to take any action related to any purchase. The only action that you would likely come back into session for, that you should come back into session for, would be for adjournment of the meeting.
Before I ask for that, is there anyone that has anything else they'd like to share or add? None? Therefore, the resolution calling for closed session for land purchases for the potential use for future fire station appears on page 34. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Sorry. All in favor, or excuse, read the roll. Read the roll, please, Barbie.
Councilmember Pfeiffer?
Aye.
Councilmember Graham?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin?
Aye.
Mayor Zini?
Aye.
Councilmember Wood?
Aye.
Resolution is approved. As Todd said, we will now recess to closed session to the Traverse to Sioux room, and we will close this meeting down there when we are finished. Thank you. I guess we're not done with that yet, but...